I love coffee. This morning I was like, oh, I need to make a few videos today. I'm not really sure I'm in the mood. Sometimes you're not in the mood. And then I thought, oh, I'll have a coffee while doing the videos. And then everything will just be great. That's really hot. Last month, I started a new thing, where at the start of each month, after doing my reading wrap-up of the previous month, I lay out what books I'd like to read in this coming month. For September, I looked at 10 books that I wanted to read, and I actually stuck to it really well. These videos are helpful to me. I said in the video that it would hopefully bring me some kind of sense of accountability, and that was totally true. I read almost all the books that I wanted to from that video, so yay, go me. And if you were paying attention, which you don't have to do, you will have noticed that based on the videos that I put out during September. That was a lot of fun. This time I'm gonna do 12. Mostly because I have a staggering number of review copies to get through this month, a lot of really great books. I would say the largest number of high quality, exciting books published in 2023 are all dropping this month in October. I've got review copies and I want to talk about them, so let's go. The one book from September that I didn't manage to read is actually the one I was most hyped and excited for. The one book I wanted to read most is the only one I didn't read, and that's purely because it was the largest one. It's a really long book, it's going to take me a bit of time, and I put out 3 videos a week, so I read tactically, probably more tactically than I let on. And that book is The Square of Sevens by Laura Shepard Robinson. I mentioned this in last month's video, I haven't read it yet, and I really want to. It is an historical thriller set in 19th century England, which is also, I believe, when her previous 2 books were also set. I think that's kind of her thing, historical crime fiction, but I haven't read those. This, however, caught my eye. It is gorgeous. Lovely sprayed edges are a nice little addition, and I can't wait to read it, and I really hope I read it in October. It is now officially spooky season. I'm wearing my Sanderson Sisters t-shirt, which means I don't just want to read horror and spooky stuff, but also historical English fiction. That feels like an October vibe, so this is the month. And just before I get to some of the review copies, I also have an interesting plan for a video that I hope to do in October. I have talked 1,000 times about how my favourite novel is Frankenstein by Mary Shelley. A few months ago I got a Frankenstein tattoo, which is hard to show off in a video. I love Frankenstein. But I've never read the original 1818 text. I have had dozens upon dozens, if not hundreds of comments over the past few years asking me where to start with Frankenstein, and I always think there's only the one book. And they mean the 1831 text or the original 1818 text. In case you don't know, and as Frankenstein's biggest fan, I didn't know, which means I am not the book's biggest fan. There are 2 versions. The 1831 text was edited by Shelley herself, and it is the one that we typically read. If you go out and just buy a copy of Frankenstein, any edition, any publisher, it'll be the 1831 text, the final director's cut, if you like. But there is the 1818 text, and Penguin publishes a copy, so I went out and got this the other day. I've googled some of the differences, but I kind of want to find out for myself, so I have a plan. I'm going to read this, and as I'm reading it, I'm going to have my regular 1831 edition open next to me as well, and I'm going to go back and forth between them and check out the differences, because I know that there are some big plot differences, but I'm also aware that a lot of the differences come in terms of how the themes are expressed, and that means that the language is going to be different as well. I'm really excited to see the difference between them, so that's my video plan. I'm going to read this and compare it to the edition that most people, myself included, have read. Let's see. On to the review copies. This is Lamb by Matt Hill, published by Dead Ink Books. It's very difficult to explain what this book is, so I'm actually just going to read you the blurb. When lorry driver Dougie Alport carries out a deadly attack on his employer's head office, the reverberations of his actions unleash a grief in his wife Maureen that threatens to reveal the secret she has spent years hiding from their son Boyd. Moving north to start again is Maureen's best response, but as the walls begin to throb with mold and his mother slips from his grasp, Boyd decides to flee, finding solace with a new friend at the landfill site on the edge of town. Here, a startling discovery upends Boyd's new life and forces him into a reckoning with his mother, her past, and his future. That sounds weird as hell. I really can't wait to read it. What a strange and wonderful and kind of creepy mystery. This is going to be fun. And this is the new book from Banana Yoshimoto. She is one of Japan's most beloved authors. I've read a whole bunch of her books. She is incredible. Kitchen, Goodbye Tsugumi, Asleep, Moshi Moshi. These are all amazing works of literature, and I've loved all of them. She is fantastic. And this is the first new book translated into English from Banana Yoshimoto in years. I'm pretty sure at least 10 years. It's a short novel of about 100 pages, and the back of this review copy is covered in really, really positive quotes from writers like Brandon Taylor and Brian Washington, two amazing authors. I mean, I don't need a reason to be excited for this. I love Banana Yoshimoto. And I have her new book, her first new book in English in a long, long time. This is very exciting. And then we have Brainworms by Alison Rumfitt. If you've been a fan of my channel for any length of time, you probably know that her first novel, Tell Me I'm Worthless, is one of my favorite novels of all time. One of the best horror novels I've ever read. I have interviewed Alison, and she is an incredible talent when it comes to transgender, queer horror stories. She writes like nobody else, and I cannot wait to see what she has to offer with Brainworms. She is so beloved at this point. Cypher Press are growing and growing and growing. This is really, really exciting stuff. Go Brainworms. A new book published by Chaco Press is always cause for celebration, and I can't wait to read and review this one. This is The Delivery by Margarita Garcia Roballo. It was translated from the Spanish by Megan McDowell, who is a legendary Spanish to English translator. And I never read the author's first book, Fish Soup, which was an early translation and publication from Chaco Press, so I'm extra excited to read this one. Roballo was born in Colombia and now lives in Argentina, and she's really, really well loved and respected. This book is going to do really, really well. The Guardian have specifically compared this book to the works of Ottessa Moshfegh and Melissa Broder, and that immediately sells it to me in a big, big, big way. And in case you're interested, the blurb says, "A tolerable, ordinary life, an adequate if boring freelance job, reliably irritating video calls with your sister, half-hearted plans for the future, a writing residency, a child, and, in the middle of your half-furnished apartment, an enormous crate. Unopened, delivered days ago, and getting in the way." That's only half the blurb. I'll leave it there just to tease you. This is going to be fun. This is one of my most anticipated books of the entire year. It actually got published in the US about a year ago, and it's finally come to the UK. Europa Editions are publishing it in October, and this is Luda by Grant Morrison. If you don't know that name, Grant Morrison is one of the biggest names in comic books and has been for decades. Morrison is a Scottish writer who was part of the British invasion of comic book writers in the 90s, or was it the 80s? Where people like Alan Moore and Grant Morrison and other big name British comic book writers started writing for DC and Marvel to bring a bit of weirdness to those comics. Grant Morrison has worked on Batman. They wrote one of the great Superman comics, All-Star Superman, and they've done a lot of creator original stuff. And Grant Morrison is my favorite comic book writer. I'm going to be gushing about them an awful lot when doing this review, but this is their first ever prose novel. They wrote a book called Super Gods quite a few years ago, which was a history of the comic book industry. And other than that, they write really trippy, strange, wonderful, imaginative comic books. And they are absolutely my favorite comic book writer of all time. And this is a novel that they've written about drag queens, about occult magic, set in a strange and twisted version of Glasgow, a city I will have moved to the day that this video comes out, and I have tickets to go see Frankie Boyle interview Grant Morrison in Glasgow about a week after I move in. This is so exciting. Drag queens and occult magic. Yes, please. From Grant Morrison. Hiro Arikawa wrote The Traveling Cat Chronicles, a really, really charming Japanese novel about a cat and the cat's owner, and the two of them going on a journey all around Japan trying to find someone who will take the cat because the owner, for some reason, can no longer keep this cat. He needs to find someone who will take his cat and give it a good home. and we read this novel from the perspective of the cat. And now we have The Goodbye Cat. This is a collection of short stories about cats, again from Hiro Arikawa. This has been translated by the legendary translator Philip Gabriel, and I'm really excited to check it out. The Travelling Cat Chronicles is a lovely, if somber and quite sad book, and I have a feeling this will probably be similar. I mean, it's called The Goodbye Cat, but I love Japanese literature, I love cats, and I really enjoyed his first book. Was it his first? His previous book. And I'm sure The Goodbye Cat is going to be absolutely lovely. This cover is really sweet as well. When talking about the delivery a few minutes ago, I mentioned Melissa Broder, who's an author I really enjoy. I've read and talked about both The Pisces and Milk Fed, and now I have a review copy of her third, newest novel, Death Valley. Apparently this is very different from her first two books, which were books about bad women being bad, the Pisces especially. And apparently this is completely different. Nowhere on this review copy, inside or out, is there a blurb, so I can't really tell you anything about it. I don't know, I'm just gonna have to read it and find out, but a new Melissa Broder book is cause for celebration, and I'm sure this is gonna be fantastic. A few weeks ago now, I reread and did a video about rereading Convenience Store Woman by Sayaka Murata. That book was voted on by my patrons. I gave them 3 options. Which book should I reread and do a video about, and they voted for that. Since then, I did another poll on my Patreon. I picked 3 different books and asked my patrons which one I should reread. And I was really happy with the winner of the majority vote. The vote happened about a month ago, but I've been putting it off until October for obvious reasons. Because the book they chose was Dracula by Bram Stoker. A perfect book for October. So, in October, I am definitely going to be rereading Dracula and doing a video about it. Probably a little later in the month, just before Halloween, kind of the perfect time to reread Dracula. And I absolutely cannot wait. I've read this book once in my life. I was living in Shanghai at the time. I was very stressed with my job, and I still found a way to absolutely love this book. But it really is time for a reread, because I was about 25 when I lived in Shanghai. I was a very different person, and now I'm far more into horror and the Gothic and classic Gothic novels. Frankenstein, Wuthering Heights, Dracula. I reread Wuthering Heights about 18 months ago, did a video on that. I've read Frankenstein 5, 6, 7 times. It's time to reread Dracula, so thank you to my patrons for voting on this. This is a perfect Halloween read. The review copy that I'm most excited to talk about is Luda by Grant Morrison, without a doubt. But the book that I recently bought that I'm most excited to read in October is The Glutton by A.K. Blakemore. Just behind me here I've got The Manningtree Witches, which was her first book. I went absolutely nuts for The Manningtree Witches. I thought it was one of the most beautiful, poetic, gorgeous, exciting, evocative, and feminist historical novels I have ever read in my life. And now we have her next book, The Glutton. I am so happy I have this. I went out and bought it as soon as it was out. Oh, I am so excited. This is another historical novel, this time set in France, about a scrawny man who can eat anything. The blurb says he has eaten everything in sight, including creatures, rodents, and even, if the rumors are to be believed, a baby. And this is his life story leading up to and into the French Revolution. A French historical novel set during the French Revolution about a man who eats everything in sight, but for some reason remains skinny. I'm so excited, and this is easily one of my favorite book covers I've ever seen in my life. Absolutely, hands down. As soon as I saw it, I was like, yeah, perfect, best book cover ever, oh my god. Oh, I can't wait. And then finally we have Rouge by Mona Awad. Now, I read and did a video about her book Bunny a few months ago. I loved Bunny. I thought it was a great piece of dark academia, but it's a very divisive novel. People either love it or hate it. I loved it. And now we have Rouge. I haven't read any of her other books, and I think she's got maybe 3 other books out, but Rouge captivated me. I actually had no idea it was coming out. I was in my local bookshop about a week ago, and I just saw this sitting there. I thought, there's a new Mona Awad book? I had no idea. How exciting. This is supposed to be a gothic horror set in modern day California about the cosmetic and beauty industry and the way that it treats women. However, an Instagram book reviewer that I trust read this and hated it and said it was really boring. And this was their first Mona Awad book. So, I am now a little bit more nervous about reading it than I was. I was just excited before, now I'm apprehensive, so We'll see. I'm still going to read it in October, hopefully, but I'm a little bit more wary now. It sounds so exciting, and for even the idea of something so exciting by an author I know I like falling a bit flat, kind of sucks. But I'm remaining hopeful because I'm a very positive reader. I'm a pretty pessimistic person outside of reading, but when it comes to books, I go in positive. I hope to love a book. That's always my attitude. I want to love every book that I read, and that attitude often carries me through. So let's see how we go with Rouge. Okay, there you go. There are 12 books that I cannot wait to sink my teeth into in October. When this video goes out, I should be all moved into my new flat in Scotland, and I can't wait. So I'm going to be spending October living in Scotland, my new home, and reading these 12 wonderful books. 7 review copies, and 5 books that I have bought and want to read. And probably a few more if I have time, hopefully. Obviously, because it's October, I want it to be a horror and spooky season bent to everything that I do, so I'll do my best. I am the spookiest, after all. I'm not, I just like it. Okay, bye, subscribe for books.